How's it going, everybody? This is the debut episode of the Nitty Gritty. This is our video show on wrestling. My name is Chad, and with me is Leonard. And I am just a wrestling fan. We both used to write for a website, 411 Mania. I didn't really do much on the wrestling side of things, but I grew up a huge wrestling fan, still am to this day. Leonard wrote for the wrestling side of things over there and is still a writer today. He's a journalist for the Coshocton Tribune, among others. Right, Leonard?
Yes, correct. A little bit of this, that, and the other thing.
All right. So our first episode today is going to be on overused and underused wrestling moves. So we all know what overused and underused means. You could call it overrated and underrated if you want to say it that way. I will start. And the one that first came to mind when I thought of this topic, and, you know, I guess Mauro Ranallo would call it the tope suicida, or the, dive through the ropes onto the floor. I feel like WWE has a set list of moves that, like, a lot of the talent use on a regular basis. And this one, I don't even like seeing it anymore. Like, everybody does it. They do it the same way. Very few people have a variation on it. Now, when The Undertaker was working full time, he would do it over the top rope, and, like, it was a big move for him to do. Obviously, we're not going to see him do that too much now, but a lot of the talent do this, and I don't know. It gets on my nerves now, and, like, I just feel like everybody does it. It's almost predictable at the point of the match when they do it. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, right when you started talking, I started picturing, like, everybody doing it. And kind of what I'm going to get into is the idea of what I'm going to call the bell curve of the moves, which I'll explain to in a minute. But that's one, too, where I think back in the day, I think I first remember seeing that in WCW with the luchadors that they had brought in from Mexico, that those guys were doing it.
Right.
And then as that lucha influence kind of got more permeated, you saw more people doing it. And then you mentioned Undertaker. When Undertaker would bust it out, you would go crazy.
Right.
Because he's a guy not only that size, but that type of character. I've heard it referred to as Lucha Taker. Like when Lucha Taker happens, it's cool and hilarious both at the same time. But yeah, now it seems to be like, especially in WWE, there's almost like a match template. Like, this is how we do it. And there's always a portion where a guy gets knocked to the floor, and then that's how you get out there. Is that you don't, like, just walk out. You jump over the ropes. Back in the day, for example, like a guy like a Randy Savage, he would give you the double axe handle off the apron or off the top. Yeah, that was like and I'm going to get into this too when I talk to the idea of maybe bringing that back. Or because, like, if you had a guy today, like, go up top and come off with a double axe handle, people would go crazy for that, even though that's a move like 30-some years old, as opposed to the tope suicide or the different things that you want to call it. So yeah, definitely right now, I think that is an overused move of right now, especially since everybody is doing it, and as you mentioned, it seems like it comes at a certain spot every time. It's very predictable.
Right. So why don't you give your first one, and then you can go into what you were talking about with the bell curve.
Sure. Well, basically, the bell curve is going to lead into what I kind of want to talk about. Was, as I was thinking about this topic, was the idea that I think most signature moves, not basic stuff like a chin lock or a drop kick or an arm bar, which has been used forever, but like a lot of signature moves, they get sort of invented and perfected and popularized, and then, like, everybody's doing it, and then they're doing, like, variations of it, and then it goes from, most of the times these moves were started as finishers or big spots, and then they become false finishes and then transition moves, and then you got nobody doing them anymore. So I thought the great example of that was the DDT. Jake Roberts, pretty much from what everyone says, invented it, perfected it, popularized it throughout the 1980s. He was really the only guy doing it, especially in WWF. Michael Hayes pops to mind. I think he was doing a DDT maybe later on towards the early 90s. But then when Jake leaves WWF, he's out of the national eye a little bit, then everyone starts doing a DDT. You've got minor variations like Raven's Even Flow. You've got things like Mick Foley's double underhook or double arm DDT.
You mean spin music?
the sweet chin music, and you got just, and then you got and always too, part of the bell curve is the inverted version. So then guys start doing the inverted DDT, like Sting, Scorpion, Death Drop, and then you get to a point where Jake, of course, has built the DDT as being a devastating finishing maneuver. So people buy it as that. So then you buy it as a false finish. So then guys start using it as a false finish. You think it's going to get the 3 count, and it doesn't. So then it doesn't become a credible finisher anymore. It's a build-up move. It's a setup move. And then it kind of becomes a transition move. For example, The Rock's snap DDT. I call it more of a snap DDT, or almost a flip DDT, because he's not flipping, but the dude that he's hitting always seems to do kind of a flip.
Right.
And he used that was a pure transition move for him. So we're talking, now we're into the odds. So come today, like nobody does a DDT. I can't think of one guy off the top of my head other than Randy Orton with his rope-assisted DDT that does any sort of a DDT really anymore regularly.
I feel like, I could be wrong, I feel like Dolph Ziggler still gets it out every now and then.
Now that you say that, I think it's an every now and again move for him, yes. But now it's underused. So then you could bring it back. And I was thinking the perfect way to do this is Jake Roberts is in AEW now, managing Vance Archer. And, Vance, I looked this up to make sure he didn't. And actually, at one point, Vance seemed to was doing an inverted variation of a DDT, but he doesn't do a DDT. So I think if you have Jake teach Vance the DDT and have him start using that, I think you can get it over again. And an example of that is back in the day, everybody used the figure 4 leg lock. Greg Valentine and Ronnie Garvin had a feud over who had the best figure 4 leg lock. So you had two guys doing 20-minute matches that were like 90% figure 4 leg lock.
Right.
But of course, that was Ric Flair's signature move. So Charlotte Flair, his daughter, starts doing the figure 8, which is just a figure 4 with a bridge.
Right.
So she brings that move back, and now it's a credible submission hold again, even with that little variation thrown in there. And if I remember correctly, I think when she started doing that, they mentioned how like the back bridge added to her leverage and added to the pressure. So they explained why she was doing that, and not just because it looked cool, even though it does look cool and athletic.
Even though it takes a little bit longer to put on.
Yes.
Same could be said about the inverted DDT. I feel like Sting, whenever he would do that Scorpion Death Drop, it would take him 5 minutes to get the guy into proper position. Yeah. And then finally he would drop it, and it's like, by that point, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, what's going on? But no, I love the figure 8. And you're right. They could do variations of that now. I like the DDT, and I wish that more people did it, but I also wish that more people did it like Jake. And maybe that's because I grew up with him doing it, because, it's, you can't really mess with the best in that regard. And nobody did it like he did.
No, I today, to get ready for this, I watched on YouTube some Jake DDT highlights, and I watched some Raven DDT highlights. And Raven's the only guy that was, I think, close to being able to hit that like Jake does. And, and another move that kind of got popularized for a while, like the RKO / Diamond Cutter. Right. And the reason why Randy and DDP are the best at it is because they can hit it out of nowhere in any position. And I think that's why the DDT that Jake and Raven did is the same way. I think the more angles that you can hit it and the more you can get it out like that, I think that makes that more of a move that fits certain people.
Those are the best moves. The moves that you can hit on anybody from pretty much any position. Those are, a lot of the times those are the moves that get over the best and that you remember the most, the ones that it doesn't matter if the guy's huge, 500 pounds or, 200 pounds. If you can get it at anywhere in any position, though, it's always adds to the shock value and the, surprise element. Right.
If Jake Roberts can DDT Andre the Giant, you can hit that on anybody.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, another move I want to mention while we're here is some of those, not everyone can do it, is the Stone Cold Stunner, aka Ace Crusher. And this is an interesting one because I talk about how Jake was like the inventor. And Johnny Ace, aka John Laurinaitis, is considered to be at least the guy that kind of perfected and popularized the stunner, which is different than the RKO or the Diamond Cutter because you're kicking out as opposed to dropping down.
Right.
And after Austin does it, like no one else is really doing it in the WWE. I'm sure there's maybe a couple guys I'm not thinking of, but the fact that like everybody in WCW had a stunner all of a sudden. Bruce Beefcake was the disciple, and he was doing the Apocalypse, which was a stunner.
Oh yeah.
My favorite knockoff stunner, without question, was Disco Inferno's Chart Buster. That was and Disco's Chart Buster actually looked really good because of the way he would snap it, because he would snap it down and then pop back up to his knees. Well, especially with Austin, after he had all the medical issues after the botched pile driver with Owen, was like he would hit the stunner and then he would stay down there.
Right. Yeah.
He would cover the guy. So I actually, and this may be sacrilegious to some of those people out there watching. I loved Disco's Chart Buster. That was a good variation on that. But sometimes too, it's like I know the new thing to say is like hey mom, can we get the Stone Cold Stunner? And she's like, oh, we got the Stone Cold Stunner at home, and you get home it's the Chart Buster. I've seen that being a meme now of people saying like a knockoff version.
Do you think they make highlight videos of Disco Inferno's move? I don't know.
I should have looked for that today. I didn't. What's fun though is you can also find on YouTube, and here we're plugging like everything else you can find on YouTube. Is like you can find like the top 10 or 15 moves of a guy, and sometimes I'll see a name and go, I didn't know that guy had 15 moves. I won't name anyone.
Kevin Owens has a stunner too. He brought it back for a little.
Oh
bit.
Yeah,
and he apparently asked Steve's permission to do it, and he did it fine, but it seems like he was more not adding any variation on it. He was just kind of doing it like Steve Austin did it, which is okay.
Yeah,
nobody's gonna get mad.
Yeah,
it's still a cool move to watch.
Yeah, it's a total homage, and I think that's when you get into some of these guys, they're just doing it to pay tribute to someone. Right. And again, another move that got overused for a while because of that was the 5-star frog splash because of Eddie Guerrero.
Right.
RVD was using it, of course, and still uses it, I believe. I haven't watched Impact in a while, but with Eddie, when Eddie passed away, of course Chavo was doing it, but then you had a lot of guys starting to work that in as a tribute, to Eddie. I don't think you can do it now. As much as you did. Yeah.
I feel like I feel like nobody does just a simple splash off the top now. Like they have to do something different. Like it would be great to have some guys bring back just a simple splash off of the top. Like they have to do a frog splash, or they have to do a corkscrew, or they have to do, something different, but like a lot of people do the frog splash. At least that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's not maybe quite as much as when Eddie first passed, but it's still there. And what you're talking about with top rope moves, like just go back to like the Superfly splash, the Jimmy Snuka Superfly splash. It seemed like for a while it was like trying to up the other guy with the flip, because you would do a splash, and then you would do a moonsault, and then you would do like a senton, and then you would do like a 360. And a 480 and a 990 and a 3000, whatever. It was just like, how many total rotations can you do before you hit the mat? That seems to be where that's at for me right now.
And who will be the first person to die trying something that nobody else has done? And I was going to say, since we're on the topic of top rope moves, this is the same. This one of my second ones was people going off the top rope into a crowd of wrestlers waiting below.
Oh, yes.
Now there are people that can do that really, really well. Mm-hmm. If they can transition and do the move really fast, then I think it's fine. But when you have a group of like 8 guys and it's one guy and everybody falls down because he just flipped in the air and possibly grazed some guy's head with his knee, like it looks stupid. And like some guys, like they wait too long. Like they're up there too long. It feels like they're up there for 2 minutes and everybody's still waiting and looking like they're out of breath down below. And they do their move and everybody falls down and has to look like they're in pain. And it's like, does no one in the back look at this and say, man, this is ludicrous. Why are we doing this?
Well, you know, we talked. I know this is going to be a subject at one point for us here on the show. Is that I'm not watching a lot of current wrestling. One, because my living situation has changed during the pandemic, and my cable situation has changed during the pandemic. But back when I first started, when AEW first came on, and I started watching it. That's one thing I noticed about AEW. It seemed like every tag match had that spot where you would have, you know, the one team on the floor and the guy would dive out on top of them, or the show would end with, you know, whoever group running down and then someone diving out on top of them. Yeah, you're right. What that falls into is a suspension of disbelief category,
right?
Because again, you're waiting forever for the guy to set up and to do it. Where again, if you go back to where that spot came from, and I don't know the exact origins of it, but, you know, I think of the Attitude Era and like the TLC matches with like the Hardys and the Dudleys and Edge and Christian, like those guys. Like I remember those guys doing it. And how that worked for them is because they knew just keep fighting in a pack right here at the spot. Like keep doing stuff.
Right. Look like
and wait for the guy.
Right.
Yeah, look like you're doing something, and then keep half an eye on the ring. Again, what we're talking about with some of these moves, whether they work or they don't work, which is a little bit different, overused or underused, but the timing of it, the rhythm of it, like the guy doing it. So, again, I think that's one, too, where they were doing it in these TLC matches. Those guys had the perfect timing for it. They knew how to make it work. And now everybody just does it because they think it looks cool. And it doesn't necessarily when, again, as you said, it takes 5 minutes to set up.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, do you have, is there any other moves that come to mind that are overused for you?
Again, another one that I thought about was and I know I'm going to mispronounce this, but the Uranage, aka the rock bottom, aka the bookend. That was another one, much like the stunner, where one guy starts using it. And two happens a lot, and I think this is the case with that was a move that was popularized in Japan and then brought over to the U.S. And the power bomb was kind of the same way in the early 90s. Like I think Sid was like the first dude to start doing a power bomb in the U.S. And then everybody started doing a power bomb and different versions of power bomb. You got like tiny guys doing a power bomb, and that's really a big man move. So some of those moves that we get brought over from either Mexico or Japan to the U.S., I think you have a guy who kind of perfects it, and it's sort of different to the bell curve I was talking about, because you got this line out here of used in Japan,
right,
and then brought to the U.S. As U.S. fans, you know how we first got to know some of these moves, and not in any. I guess I was thinking of this historically, and I don't know why, but the Hurricane Rana kind of comes to mind. You know, like the Frankensteiner. I think that might have been the first time I saw a Hurricane Rana.
Right.
And God, was Scott Steiner so just athletic back in the day? Like late '80s. Sting and Scott Steiner, like the two most athletic dudes that you will ever see in a ring. Go back and watch some old stuff. But like the Frankensteiner, I think, was the first time I saw that move done. And then by the early to mid 90s, every guy, and particularly your lucha guys, your luchadors, was doing a Rana. And I you know, and again, I'm kind of hard pressed to think of anyone who regularly does that now. But I think it's still out there.
Maybe Rey Mysterio when he's wrestling. You know,
but he's grandfathered in. There's a couple dudes that are like grandfathered into a move.
Yeah.
And Ray, who's almost a grandfather, you know, could be. You know, he's in there. So I think you do have some guys that would still. And you know what? I would mark out crazy if Scott Steiner broke out the Frankensteiner today.
You know, if he did it and was able to not, you know, break his neck or hurt somebody else, that would be cool to see. You know, he's probably past his prime is a nice way to say.
Nice way to put it. And he's not as svelte, let's say, as he was back in the day when he was doing that on a regular basis.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, those were kind of just the ones I thought of. And again, I said I kind of thought of this in a historical way. One more thing I didn't want to mention, because I thought of an underused move that I would when Rusev first debuted in WWE. I said to myself, they need to give that guy a heart punch.
Oh yeah.
Nobody does a heart punch anymore. It was always like a foreign heel move.
Right.
It's not really a finisher, but it could be a setup. And I thought Rusev should have a heart punch wherever you wind up. If you are listening to this, Rusev, wherever you go, I want you to add a heart punch and an iron claw to your repertoire, because that's a dude that could get both those moves over.
I would love to see the claw brought back. And I would love to see, like, the heart punch. One of the moves that I had on my list was not necessarily a heart punch. It was a throat punch. Which, could be really devastating. Now, Big Show does his knockout punch, but, like, I'm not, it's okay. I'm not as big on that. I feel like it could be done in a cool way, like either, like you were saying, the heart punch or a throat punch. I think that would be fun to see somebody bring that back, somebody that could really get that move over.
Yeah, or a throat thrust like Haku used to do, like the double.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one, too. But again, you need like a Haku dude to get that over. Again, I think when I keep going back to Rusev, he is a burly throwback foreign kind of heel. Right. So when I see him, I think of moves like a claw. I think of moves like a heart punch. And that's the thing. I think you can pull out these moves that nobody does anymore. And I think you can modernize them. I think you can educate the fans. I think you can, because what you can do, say, with a heart punch is like, oh, like that's a move nobody does because it's so deadly, and I can't believe he's doing that. And as an announcer, you can help get that over. So I think with underused moves, and that was the main one I thought of. I think it would, and like I said with the DDT earlier, that's an underused move now. But you could take a guy like Vance Archer with the connection to Jake, and you could get that over. You could take a guy like Rusev or anyone playing a foreign heel character and give them a heart punch and get that over with the connection to the history of it and things like that.
Right. Well, no, I agree. And since you went into underused moves, there's a few that I thought of. One is the slingshot suplex that I believe Tully used to do it.
Yes, I love the slingshot suplex. Any slingshot moves, I would totally be down for.
Absolutely. And there's another two that I had thought of. They kind of go together, sort of. Like, I was going to mention the side rush and leg sweep, but I was also going to mention chain wrestling. I would like to see more guys do stuff like that. Kind of like, I don't want to just mention Bret Hart because he's not the only person that did it, but he certainly did those types of moves in a really good way. And he was able to tell stories in the ring in a really good way. The older I get, the more matches I watch with him, the more I really notice like how great he was at telling a story and, connecting one move to the other. And that sort of chain wrestling, to me, it always gets me more invested in the match, as opposed to a lot of the talent now where it feels like they have their stock moves. They have to get in those moves. Like, every match feels like it has the same structure to it. It's made by the same producer. I doubt that it's made by the same producer, but it seems like it fits the same sort of mold. And that just kind of gets old after a while. So I'd like to see some more of that, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I believe Jim Cornette likes to say that you hit your shit and you get out, which is what that is. And I agree with you. I think so many people I have my moves that I have to do. Like, I have to do these moves in a certain order throughout the course of the match. Where yes, Brett is one, of course, Ric Flair is another. Who, even though they had their 5 moves of doom, and you could point to any match and find these moves, the difference is that they told a story. They were part of a narrative. For Ric Flair, it was all about going after the leg, going after the knee, setting the figure 4. Bret Hart was a lot of the same way to set up the sharpshooter. It was telling a story throughout the course of a match. My favorite match of all time, and you're getting this on episode 1, my favorite match of all time is Best 2 3 out of Falls, Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. from Clash of the Champions. I forget which one, but it's the one in New Orleans.
Right.
And that match, and the reason why, even as a kid, I was probably 10, that was 89, so I was 10 years old. Even as a kid, like I understood the story being told. I understood the characters involved. Even as a kid, I got involved in that match. I got engaged in that match because of the story being told and the characters being developed. So yeah, it's just not. You call it chain wrestling. I would just call it narrative structure and storytelling. I think that's something that a lot of guys don't do today. I think occasionally you will see that in big pay-per-view matches, but even on TV, if you go back and watch like old school NWA Saturday Night. Even in the shorter 8 to 10 minute matches, they're still telling stories. Even in the Road Warriors squashing two local dudes, they're still telling a story. That's still a way that they're getting over, their dominance is being built, things of that nature. So I don't know if you could call it an underused move, but storytelling might be an underused technique these days.
Absolutely. I mean, ring psychology, ring storytelling is something it's definitely lacking. And, that match would definitely be in my top 5 as well. And, you mentioned Ric Flair, and one of the things, like, I guess in certain podcasts I've heard, people would often ask Ric Flair, like, why do you always do, the face plant? Why do you always do the, the flip off of the turnbuckle and then you run across to the other ring post? And he would say, when he watched some of his idols growing up, he always wanted to see them do their hot moves. That's why he went to see. Same way you would go to a concert and you want to hear a band play the hits. And I think that certain people like The Rock and Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, whoever, like, you pay to see those moves. But I feel like a lot of guys these days that are nowhere close to the level of any of the names I mentioned have those moves and feel like they have to do them, but they really don't. Like, nobody's buying a ticket to see you do those certain moves. Like, you can shake it up every now and then. I don't know. That's just kind of the way I feel. Like, I feel like not enough guys. I feel like guys feel like, okay, well, this is my moveset now. I have to do it this way, but you don't. You can shake it up, but maybe they're not allowed. Who knows?
Yeah, it depends probably on the company, but with that, it's the idea of, I think, the passion and the storytelling, and there's a difference between, say, me playing the guitar and Jimi Hendrix playing the guitar.
Yeah, right.
There's a big difference between Ric Flair wrestling a match and, say, I won't give a name, but any regular guy working today doing a match just on the technique, the skill, the experience, the ability, the sheer ability. So I think that comes down to it as well, that even if these guys were tutored, let's say, by, because a lot of these agents, in WWE, they came from the older school, or they could bring in guys that they could learn. I think they could teach them, this is how you do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they could do it.
Right.
So I think that comes into it too. Not that I still don't think there are some really special guys out there and some really great guys out there. For example, I told you I watched a little bit of AEW when it first came on before the pandemic hit, and I was loving MJF.
Yeah.
Loving him. Not only do I think he's great in the ring and great on the mic, but I think he knows how to tell a story, like the feud that he had with Cody. And again, Cody knows how to tell a story because he goes back, having grown up in the business, having worked with his dad and his brother. That was some of the best stuff that I thought AEW was doing at the time, was the MJF Cody feud and the matches that they had. And MJF is one guy definitely today that I think if you gave him the ball and told him to run with it and gave him time and the right opponent, I think he could do some of that storytelling and that narrative work and that chain wrestling that we've been talking about.
No, I agree with you. I like him as well, and I think he's probably going to be one of the top guys in AEW for a while.
Oh yeah.
If I had to guess, some more underused moves that I thought of. I'll just say in general, creative submissions. There are so many submissions, and you might hear me mention one of those submissions in our next show. But there are so many submissions that I feel like people could use more often, but they don't. for whatever reason. I was always a big fan of the, I guess the general term of it is the muffler stretch. I kind of first was introduced to it as the Brock lock.
Yeah.
But I like that one a lot. I'll never forget the first time I saw that. I think it was put on, the first time I saw it, I think it was put on Benoit. And he ended up passing out to it in the ring on SmackDown. But other than submissions, the top move that I have not seen in the States, it could have been done on NXT once, if I'm forgetting, is the Burning Hammer that Kenta Kobashi does. And it's kind of like an inverted, FU, attitude adjustment sort of move.
Mm-hmm.
And I know why it's not done. It's a very dangerous move if you do it like Kobashi does. If anybody looks up clips of that, we'll try to post a picture of it here. It's very dangerous. The guy ends up, usually landing on his head. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can really hurt somebody. But those are some of the moves that I would love to see. I don't know. What are your thoughts on submissions?
This may be going deep into the nerdy weeds for some of the people watching, but I was doing a fantasy wrestling league for a while where I had created a character and we were writing matches and storylines and all this. And we had a character who I was having a feud with that he was going to quit. The guy said, I was going to quit and I want you to write me off with an injury angle. So I was like, I need to find like the craziest move to put on this guy. And I started looking up stuff. So how my character injured this dude was with a top rope burning hammer.
Oh, yeah, that would do it.
And it put the guy in a coma.
Yeah.
That was the thing. It was a coma. And that was the storyline. My guy would go visit this dude in the hospital because my guy was a face and he felt bad.
I can't imagine somebody doing that in an actual match, but
right. Well, that's fantasy wrestling, man. You do whatever you want.
Right.
If you can explain it correctly, there you go. But when you said burning hammer, it was the first thing I thought of. And again, yeah, I think we were talking about earlier about a lot of moves get brought over from Japan and then they get overused. And there are still some moves over there that are being used, like the burning hammer, that just hasn't gotten over here yet. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of moves that maybe aren't getting used today because of the injury factor or the risk factor. The vertebraker comes to mind that Hurricane Helms used to do.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Or a pile driver,
Yes.
Driver.
Yeah. The tombstone still got used because you're cradling the guy with the knees. I mean, if you watch Undertaker or Kane do it, like the head's not touching the ground. They're not touching
not
at all. And then I think the last dude I may remember seeing was Jerry Lawler, again grandfathered in.
Right.
I think he would still use one for a while, but then it was funny when it was like he couldn't use a pile driver and he would win a match. Like I think he was using the second rope fist drop as his finisher at one point because it's what he had left, Right. So I think that's another reason why some moves are underused, just because of the risk factor to it. And I don't have a problem with that because you don't want guys, even if you're the best and the cleanest, which a lot of these guys, most of these guys are. If you're wrestling for a national company like AEW, WWE, Impact, even Ring of Honor, even, you know what you're doing for the most part.
Right.
So even those guys, and look, Owen Hart and Steve Austin, who we mentioned earlier. I mean, two of the best guys ever. And Owen, I believe it was determined that Owen just kind of slipped up a hair with that pile driver, and that's what broke Steve's neck. So look at me call him Steve like we're best friends. Me and Steve.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes when people do that, it's a pet peeve of mine. But it's I think I've heard that Steve thought that he was. Oh, there you are. Leonard's back with us. I think Steve said thought Owen was going to land on his knees, and instead Owen land on his rear end. And what's interesting is when I watched an Owen Bret Hart match, Owen did that same move and he landed on his knees. But for whatever reason, when he did it with Steve Austin, he landed on his butt. And, we all know what happened there. But we can obviously go on and on about some of these moves. One I didn't get to say that I think is overused is spears, but
oh yeah.
Yeah. But we thank you for joining us on our first episode here. And please join us next week where we start our profile on some of the lesser known wrestlers that have appeared throughout the years. So for Leonard, my name is Chad, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.